In 1932, the Australian government deployed military personnel to the Western Australian wheat belt. Major Meredith and a small team of soldiers arrived with machine guns to cull a massive population of emus that had moved on to the region's farms. This deployment was a response to a crisis years in the making. Following World War I, the government had settled thousands of returning veterans on difficult, dry tracts of land, promising them a future in wheat farming. This chart shows the financial trap that followed. As the Great Depression took hold, global wheat prices, marked by this falling line, collapsed. Meanwhile, the rising bars show the massive debts these veteran farmers had incurred just to start their operations. Between the cost of specialized equipment and the low yield of the dry soil, many farmers were already being swallowed by their overhead. Their financial survival was at risk long before the first bird arrived. By 1932, the farming community in the wheat belt was at a breaking point, desperate for any relief that would save their livelihoods from total collapse. The final blow came when 20,000 emus migrated into the region. These large, powerful birds move across the interior in search of water, and the newly established wheat fields provided a perfect food source. The emus didn't just eat the crops, they destroyed the infrastructure of the farms. Their weight and movement trampled the wheat and broke through timber fences, which allowed smaller pests to flood into the fields and finish what the emus started. The farmers, many of whom were veterans with combat experience, petitioned the Minister of Defense for help. They requested machine guns and military support, believing the same tools they had used in the war could solve their agricultural crisis. The government approved the request. They viewed the migration as a simple pest problem that could be handled through the straightforward application of military firepower. Major Meredith and his team brought Lewis machine guns to the fields, heavy, rapid-fire weapons capable of firing hundreds of rounds per minute. It was a serious escalation of force against a biological target. The military expected the emus to behave like a conventional enemy. They planned to set up stationary gun nests and fire into the large, dense flocks as they moved across the open ground. This tactical map shows why that logic failed. Instead of holding formation, the emus scattered the moment the first shots were fired. They split into small, erratic groups and ran in every direction, making it impossible for the fixed machine guns to track them. Mechanical issues also plagued the soldiers. The fine dust of the wheat belt caused the Lewis guns to jam frequently, further reducing their effectiveness against the fast-moving birds. The initial attempts proved that military tactics designed for a structured battlefield are poorly suited for the chaotic behavior of wildlife. To counter the emu's speed, the soldiers tried a more aggressive approach. They mounted a machine gun to the back of a truck, hoping to chase the flocks down across the plains. The plan backfired immediately. As this truck moves over the rutted farmland, the violent bouncing makes it impossible for the gunner to maintain a steady aim or hit a single target while in motion. This speed comparison highlights the physical gap. A 1930s transport truck, limited by the rough soil, could rarely catch up to a sprinting emu, which can reach speeds of over 30 miles per hour and turn instantly. The emus also showed a natural resilience. Because they traveled in loose groups across vast spaces, they could scatter during a confrontation and then simply reform their flocks elsewhere once the soldiers were out of sight. The campaign wasn't failing because of a clever enemy strategy. It failed because these specific military weapons were never designed to solve a problem of large-scale land management. As the military operation continued with very few birds culled, the Australian media turned the story into a national joke. Headlines began ridiculing the Army's inability to defeat a flock of birds, causing a significant public relations problem for the government. Within the halls of government, the mood shifted. Politicians faced mounting questions about the cost of the operation and the waste of military resources on a campaign that wasn't producing results. Major Meredith and his men were eventually ordered to withdraw. They packed up their equipment and left the wheat belt, while the emus remained in the fields, largely unaffected by the intervention. The withdrawal marked the end of the military's involvement. It was a clear demonstration that violence and high-caliber weaponry were not shortcuts to effective agricultural policy. Eventually, the crisis was managed through more practical means. The government turned to reinforced barrier fencing to keep the birds out of the fields and established local bounty systems that allowed the community to manage the population more effectively. The Emu War was never really about the birds. They were simply a visible symptom of deeper issues: poor settlement planning, massive debt, and a harsh environment that made farming in the region nearly impossible. Today, the story survives because it highlights the absurdity that occurs when a bureaucracy tries to apply a rigid military solution to a complex ecological problem. The Emu War remains a lesson in the limits of blunt force. It shows that while human ingenuity eventually secured the farms through fences and local management, the attempt to solve a biological crisis with a machine gun resulted only in a very public, very strange defeat.